in the first part of a brand new series, Department Store.
Oh, is it spongy?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it's very comfortable.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yes.
Do you like that one?
Yeah, oh, it's lovely, yes.
Yes, I think that one's got a lever on it, hasn't it? If you
This has a watch seat, yeah.
Get
on! Years ago, most towns had their own independent department stores, but now many are closing down. These charming old emporiums can't compete with big out-of-town retail parks. I think that's sad. For a nation obsessed with shopping, where has our choice gone? So I set out to visit 3 of the stores that are refusing to shut up shop. I wanted to know if they could still survive in the cutthroat world of modern retailing. In the heart of the Yorkshire Dales, there's a charming little family business which has been passed from one generation to another. Milners is a department store spread over 2 floors in the small town of Leyburn. Upstairs is David Milner's domain. It sells furniture, carpets and rugs. For 40 years, David has also been fitting blinds and curtains for the people of the Dales. What is it you're doing?
Making sure the mechanism works all right.
But this year, he turns 65 and he's going to hand the business over to his daughter and her husband. What is it you're doing?
Just exercising my back and bottom of my body.
Downstairs, Milners specialises in fashions for ladies of a certain age, as well as menswear and children's wear.
You ever going to do any work, David? Because you've not started.
And this is where David's wife, Linda, occasionally helps out. Linda is a retired primary school teacher and hopes once David is retired, they'll spend more time on long holidays.
I'm a doer. He's a stand and stare. This is what he does better than anything else, yakking to the customers. David has worked here 40-odd years and he's done very well. But the world has moved on. I mean, we're in the 21st century now, and it took a while to get David into the 20th century, let alone the 21st century.
Just spotted something that shouldn't be there because it's the wrong range.
Taking Milners into the 21st century is David and Linda's daughter, Leonie, and her husband, Keith.
So you've got to remember we are a fashion shop for your 50-plus lady, which is, I would say, the 50-plus lady is forgotten age.
But Leonie believes 50-plus women should be offered more fashionable attire.
You got this denim skirt, which we actually have sold to 50-plus ladies. It works.
Upstairs, Leonie's husband Keith shares the furniture department with his father-in-law. He's traded in a high-paid job in the south for more time with his family.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, yes, I think that's very good. This is something that really wouldn't have happened 18 months ago when I was down in London. And this is part of the reason why we wanted to move, because, you know, getting wrapped up in the rat race, you just don't, you know, you can forget about this. You know, and this is probably what I realised was more important to me than careers and money and living that type of life. And
being with your kids.
Yeah, well, being with the kids, being closer to Leonie and keeping it all closer together.
When I arrived at Milners, Keith and Leonie had just spent £18,000 on a new shop front.
Finishes it off, doesn't it?
David hadn't wanted to spend the money, but the family had ganged up on him.
Oh, this is like jacket you got here last year.
And inside the shop, it was a similar story.
You painted this colour and you say it's green.
Leonie was convinced downstairs needed a total makeover.
It needs to be a warm colour.
We want it to be something pale, off-white.
But the lights...
It's the lights that need changing. It's far too harsh, is this?
It is harsh.
These lights are going to stay exactly as they are.
I think we've spent enough money on this, and we did them change 5 years ago, and these were the top-of-the-range lights for showing the colours of the clothes.
Since when have you sold ladies' clothes?
Well, the point is, you start putting little circles of light in there, you're going to make the whole of this floor...
No, you won't. You have to spotlight.
I don't like circles on the ground. I think it's wrong.
People aren't looking at the ground, are they? They're looking at the clothes. I mean, it would be all right in an ironmonger's shop or something like that, but not in a ladies' dress shop. And you want to have spots and hidden light, concealed lighting.
Well, Keith and I'll discuss this, and it'll be a decision between ourselves.
Well, I think Keith agrees with us, actually. He does.
Does he?
Yeah.
So you're going to have to get your head round it, and that's what we'll do.
I disagree entirely. I am not
come
going
on,
to.
David, don't be so stupid.
No, I'm not going to.
Well, we'll continue this.
Leonie was looking forward to David's retirement because it meant she could make these changes to the shop. And Keith was looking forward to David's retirement because it meant he could run the business the way he wanted to.
It's not desperate that we need.
He'd already taken over the nerve centre of the blind-fitting business, David's desk. And he was planning an overhaul of David's old-fashioned paperwork system. The filing's not quite up to scratch, is that right?
It's not what I would do, and the system, basically we have a system here with paper clips. I mean, we've got furnishings, blinds, carpets, loose covers and curtains being made, items awaiting delivery, and then jobs to be worked out. And it's a system that I suppose David's dad used, which David's used and adopted, and probably hasn't changed since then. That's that. Okay.
Keith had made sure that in the 6 months left before he retired, David would be out of the way, on the road, constantly fitting blinds and curtains. Is Keith working very hard these days?
Yes, of course he is. He's in the office. I'm the one that's doing the legwork outside at the moment. I quite enjoy doing the legwork outside. It keeps me occupied.
Yeah.
Not ready for retiring yet. Right.
That was strange. It hadn't occurred to me that David didn't want to retire. He just said that he's not ready for retirement yet. David had been driving around the Dales for 40 years, fitting blinds and curtains. Today he was heading to the village of Harnby, but as always, he was running late.
I don't know what time, but Keith put morning, and that's basically, I thought, well, she's taken the day off. She's not going to worry too much if we're a few minutes late.
David thought Marge, the customer, wouldn't mind him turning up an hour late, but he was wrong.
I've taken a day off work for this, David.
He had a whole house to fit with blinds and curtains, but after an hour he'd only put up one pole. Mind you, he'd built his business proudly on the premise that good timekeeping was not important.
I was never really on time. I was always known for being a little bit on the late side, but in the Dales you don't worry too much about it. Lots of everybody, if they know you're coming with a carpet, they'll expect you. Oh look, have I made that a bit tall? I just realised there's that flaming wooden box in the corner. I forgot it was there. I didn't look at it. It's the same colour. Sod's law! Oh, bloody hell, Marge. What? There's a box in the corner. I've started at the wrong window first. Sorry. I'm just putting the job back a little bit. They'll keep on going till we get the job finished.
I don't know, at this rate, it's going to be midnight by the time you've finished.
Don't worry. We'll just get on with the job.
I am not happy.
Marge's fears were well founded. By the end of the day, David had not finished the job. A couple of nights later in Leyburn, the 4 directors of Milners got together for a board meeting in the unlikely setting of Leonie's kitchen.
How are you doing?
Those who can do the job.
Here they were planning the handover of the business from David to his daughter and Keith in 5 months' time. But on this occasion, David came under attack for his late timekeeping with Marge.
I specifically booked an AM appointment because she knows what you're like. An AM appointment, and then I'll get a phone call. Where is he?
She was all right when I got down to see her.
But David, because you sweet talker.
That's right.
So what do I say to them on the phone at the time?
Oh, I shall see Mr. Milner and see if I can find it for you, and then just leave it at that.
Right.
Excuse me, that
Stop
is
joking.
the last thing I would do.
She looks at me, does this one,
Well,
as if
you-
I should not be doing this.
No,
I run the
you're
business for
going back
40
to-
years.
You're going back to the past, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
We've always dealt with them.
I've goes back to the days when I used to come and spend hours to do a whole village, and I had about 14, 15 customers, and they knew that I would arrive sometime during the day.
But that was 40 years ago. It's not now. We're not living in the 19th
We're in the time
century.
of the internet now, not the time of the cart and horse.
People have things they have to do. If a customer says they've got to be somewhere at 10
This is why
o'clock,
I've got
I
a
don't
good
give it.
strong back, isn't
No,
it?
it's not. It's not. You're rude. You're thick-skinned and it's rude. I know for having lived with it for 40 years. It really is infuriating to be standing around when somebody saunters up. This is why I don't want to go to church with you anymore, because I hate walking in late.
The battle between old and new at Milners was not just being waged against David. A few days later, Leonie and the window dresser Margaret were preparing the shop's swish new frontage. Leonie wanted to use the displays to change the fuddy-duddy image of Milners.
I suppose when I was growing up, I suppose Milners had a bit of a stigma about it.
It had really. It's probably been a bit old-fashioned.
Yeah.
That was the word. Yes.
And
yeah.
whereas me coming into the business now, I can actually prove to people that actually that's not what we're about. That's partly what we're about, but we are trying to bring it up to date, and I can do that personally.
So do you two not always see eye to eye on?
Not always. Not always. Leonie probably thinks so, but I don't. I tend to eat humble pie a little bit and don't say a lot.
Really?
Yeah, I could just walk out. You see, it doesn't worry me whether I work or I don't.
Oh, right. Oh, I see.
So I'm at a good advantage. If she says go, I would walk out and no questions
But I
asked.
wouldn't say go, would I, Margaret? She's been here, she's part of the furniture here, aren't you, Margaret?
Part of the family.
Yeah. I mean, would that go over the top?
When they did disagree, Margaret could depend on the support of one person in particular.
But I don't think it goes.
Doesn't go.
You're outnumbered, Leonie. Doesn't go.
That goes with it, but that
Yeah.
doesn't.
No,
because
I wasn't thinking that with that.
You were.
Was I?
Yes,
Yes.
you were. Yes, you were.
I thought,
Can I just have a quiet word with you, dear, please?
Because
not
I,
on camera.
because I wasn't terribly enthused about it.
No.
Because it's young, I was told.
Margaret, it's Margaret's job to do it. She's good with colours. She doesn't need telling, and it rather offends her when you do that. So please let her do it. She's done it for years. Don't teach your grandmother to suck eggs. They're our staff, and we value them. So please,
I know.
don't offend them. Right.
Okay.
I could see that Linda's interference had infuriated her daughter, and Leonie had a fight on her hands with the older generation to make her mark.
Nobody else knows the stock as well as me because I buy it. When it comes in, I open it up, I price it up, I get it on the shop floor. There's nobody else who knows it as well as I do. So surely then it's up to me to sell it.
Oh, is it spongy?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it's very comfortable.
Yes.
Isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yes.
Do you like that one?
Yeah, oh, it's lovely, yes.
Yeah. And you like that one, do you?
Yes. Yes, it's quite good.
Yes, I think that one's got a lever on it, hasn't it? If you.
Oh,
on
this
the
has
side,
a watch seat, yeah.
Get on.
Do you prefer that?
Yes, it's comfy. It's strong. I can't get it down. Which way do you do it?
Upstairs at Milners, Keith had appointed a trainee called James. James had given up working as a postman because he wanted to do something a bit more demanding.
How have you made the transition from being a postman to working in this area?
In terms of the actual the hours I'm working, it's a fairly big change. So just getting used to the working all afternoon's been a bit of a steep learning curve, I suppose.
Keith had asked him to learn all there was to know about carpets.
If you've got a tighter twist, which means there's more of these in, closer close proximity, it means that the chance of wearing is less. Whereas if you've got less of these, if you've got a twist that's not as tight, then your chance of the abrasion will cause it to wear more quickly. So.
It's so detailed, isn't it?
Well, exactly.
It's on there, isn't it?
Keith's plan over the coming months was to train James up in the art of carpet fitting, as well as blinds and curtains.
And is it being reverse rolled?
Yes, it is, isn't it? Sorry, no, it's not, no.
No? Sure about that?
No, sorry, no, it's not.
You sure about that?
I'm sure. Oh, yeah. Well, let's have a think about this.
Well, if it's going to go like that, it's going to
That's not reverse rolled then, is it? No. All right, that's all right.
When David retired in April, James would take over his job.
Sorry about just being in here, but I'm doing another job.
While out on another job, I asked David what he thought about James, the new trainee.
I'm not too worried one way. It's Keith who's going to have to deal with him. I'm just, as I say, I'm the dog's body now. I'm quite happy for Keith. Keith's got to work out the finances of whether it's justified to have him. I mean, Keith and I can manage quite well on our own. I can do all the outside work. I've got all the tools, I've got all the gear.
Yeah, but you are meant to be retiring.
I know, but you've got to have someone who can do the work that I'm doing. I very much hope that it'll work out, but it'll take a bit. It isn't a 5-minute transition period. I'll have to wait until he comes in here with his muck spreader.
Once again, David had indicated to me that he wouldn't be retiring on his 65th birthday. Maybe he thought he just couldn't be replaced. Most lunchtimes, David headed back to his house for a ritual of bread and cheese and homemade chutney.
So do you often prepare something for David when he comes home for lunch?
Well, if I don't prepare it, who else will?
So he's not left to fend for himself?
Oh, no. He's an old-fashioned man. Who waits for me to do it?
What's that noise?
It's David's cushion.
That. It's a vibrator.
What?
It's a vibrator.
It's a vibrating cushion.
Inside there's a battery, and if you line, can you hear?
Let me feel that. Oh, crikey.
David wanted to show me his plans for a 6-week holiday of a lifetime to Canada with Linda, and it was booked for just a few weeks after his 65th birthday.
This is the holiday which we've got planned. Leaving Manchester at 11:25 on the 18th of May, flying into Vancouver.
David had planned it with all the precision of a well-organised military exercise.
From Whistler, 100 Mile House from William Lake.
As he described the trip to me, I felt a bit confused. If he wasn't going to retire, why plan such a long holiday? Was the trip just an elaborate ruse to make Linda think he would retire?
Do you get the feeling that David's not embracing the idea of retirement as much as he should do?
I think David does not quite know what he wants.
I do. I want to go, but I want to make sure that what I'm leaving is on a good footing.
But you see, when will it be on a good footing? Who is going to be able to say that? When we are away, I mean, we have sat drinking and having a cup of coffee in France, out in the sun, and he said, "Oh, I do wish we didn't have to go home. I do wish I was retired. I'm going to retire." And then when he gets back here, it's plan B.
Which is?
I won't retire.
Right.
I mean, and this house needs a lot of work doing to it. I mean, we've been here 25 years and it's not finished yet.
What?
I shouldn't say that.
Well,
I'd been at Milners now for a month, and preparations were beginning for the busiest time of year, Christmas. The festive season is make or break for any retailer, but Leonie and Keith had increased sales by 20% since taking over. There was a sense of optimism in Milners.
Happy New Year.
The store was busy. And their new recruit was beginning to find his feet. James had been trained by Keith, and also by David, albeit a bit reluctantly.
Yeah, it's about there.
No, it isn't. The bar fits in the reveal there.
James was proving very good with customers,
Remind me what we have to do.
but at times he was easily distracted.
That is damn precision.
But the highlight of this time of year for the Milner family and all the shop staff was its annual Christmas dinner.
I knocked it over!
Spirits were high. David was eulogising to me about married life with Linda.
As long as she keeps on making me dinners for me and lying next to me in bed, that's all right.
You're going to be taken outside.
Each year, David makes a speech.
Well, can I start with saying how lovely all your ladies are looking this evening in their fine attire.
Surely in this year's speech, he would have to mention his impending retirement.
Linda and I are looking for more time to do what we want to do, and it would be nice not to work the 6 days a week, which I have done for others. I would like to thank all my members of staff for the very hard work, help and support, and I hope the business in Laban and you will continue under the new leadership of Keith and Leonie.
Can we clap?
Yes, you want to.
But it wasn't quite as clear-cut as that.
So it was there from the horse's mouth then, you will be going?
Apparently so. I read it.
You wrote it, didn't you?
Yes, I wrote it. Of course I wrote it. Who else writes for me?
The words were yours.
Did you write it, Linda?
Well, who do you think writes it? He wrote his own last night.
Linda then read David's speech, which she'd banned him from delivering.
Staff dinner time again, and I wish to say a few words to express my thoughts to you.
It was very different in tone, more descriptive of David's achievements, and seemed to point to a Milners of the future that could not operate without him.
It will be hard for the first few years for them to get to know their way around, but I shall be on hand to give any advice. We both realised that he was going to be on a steep learning curve, but the fact that I have 40 years of local knowledge of the area and know so many people up and down the Dales, and I'm able to pass on this information to him, should be of great help to him. And then the last bit he's told you, because that was in his. Right?
Yeah, and that's what we know.
Down to earth.
Well done.
Yeah, that was
Good on you, mate.
As the evening came to an end, I was left wondering if David really was going to retire. In the new year, I headed back to Yorkshire. I'd arranged to meet Leonie and her mother Linda at a hotel just off the A1 near Wetherby. They'd come to a clothes fair where they were buying the fashions for the next season in the shop.
They always go well, they do always go.
Leonie was hoping to tempt her loyal older customers with something a bit younger, which she would then showcase with a special fashion show in the spring.
We haven't got enough tops at the moment.
No, well, let's just look at the trousers first. 1, 2, 3. There's a cord. There's a soft. That one sells well.
But we need
some bingo trousers.
Do you want to explain to Richard what bingo trousers are?
What the old ladies who got playing bingo would wear. They're just pull-on trousers.
Do you play bingo?
I will not answer that question. I should think it would be obvious. I don't suppose many of us play bingo because there's nowhere in Laban to play it.
What was your mum like about clothes when you were like a teenager?
Oh God, she wouldn't let me wear anything.
Really?
I think my mum wanted 2 boys because she wouldn't let me grow my hair and she dressed me like a little boy till I was about 16.
How many little boys have you seen in dresses? I can show you hundreds of photographs of her in dresses. She's lies.
So what was she like as a teenager then?
She could get a bit bolshy, but then they all can. But I think generally she was fairly good. Except.
No, you don't need to.
She was one for the boys.
She?
Like the boys, yes.
And what's wrong with liking the boys?
Oh, nothing as long as you get on with your work.
You're not
as well.
using that at all.
What, liking boys?
Yeah, you're not using it though.
Oh, it's you two again, is it? Hi, Richard. How do? Right, excuse me if I dash.
In the soft furnishings department of Milners, things were getting very busy, but they were not going smoothly. The busy Christmas period had left David with a backlog of curtains and blinds to fit. He was getting angry about mistakes with the order book, and he felt Keith was to blame.
Is Keith there?
Yeah.
All right. If he's made a bill out, it doesn't say he's made a bill out.
Do you want me to pass it on?
Well, I don't need that, I need that. But basically, you want to finish that off, make sure that it's finished off. Right. So make sure before all the paperwork comes to me that everything is actually been finished and it's all clear.
Yeah, I will. Keith, sorry.
You got it?
Watching David, I couldn't help thinking that he wanted Keith and James to fail. He seemed to be keen to show that they couldn't function without him.
Finished.
What's wrong with it?
You haven't actually made that you've entered it. You have entered it, haven't you?
I have now, but that was written beforehand.
Yeah, because you hadn't actually done anything relating to where the order had come from either. That was when I
So
first...
it's just that bit?
Well, that's all paperwork. You've got to remember, Keith, that is important. The important part of doing it is...
I'm not the only one, though, am I?
No, but I did it for 30 years without any problems. It seems that with three people, we can't do it now.
It's not wrong, but I just think it's a bit petty at times, but there we go.
But before he left, David was determined to have the last word.
You're not putting the facts and the date you're ordering them. I think it's important. I mean, I'm going to be out shortly,
Yeah,
but...
what I'm saying is that I'm not the only...
No, but surely you should be the leader and you should make sure that it's right if you're going to take over and do this job.
Yeah.
Point made.
This was just one of several clashes over the paperwork.
There's that jacket. You look quite young. Yeah.
What's funny about that jacket?
Nothing. We saw it in the window, but it's not what we wanted.
Are you two sisters?
No, we're always getting asked that, but
Oh,
we're
wow.
not. Yeah. Friends. Yeah. Oh, no. That's quite nice.
Yeah, I saw that jacket.
Yeah.
It's rather nice.
A few days after the argument with David, James had his appraisal. Keith was anxious not to give David any more room to criticise him over the paperwork.
So how do you feel about things?
Pretty good, overall.
The paperwork system, I think you're getting to grips with now, but you must discipline. That's the most fundamental part of the business. Because if David can't find something that should be in a file or on a clip or something like that, we're stuffed.
I find it a bit stressful at times when we've got a lot going on and David's throwing blame here, there and everywhere. I find that quite difficult because, you know...
You handle that very well.
Yeah, and I find sometimes David can be a bit, well, erratic in his behaviour and sometimes can take things out a bit on people, but you know, that's the way he is and I accept that. With my grandmother being ill for such a long time, it's put a...
James felt he was making good progress, but the recent death of his grandmother had taken his mind off the job.
Yeah, so I suppose at times I've not given everything I might have done. A few days I've been just, yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, just work on the things we talked about today.
Okay.
Keith felt James's progress meant he was on course to replace David in 3 months' time.
You got your personality. When you come into a room, you will light up a room.
Yeah, yeah.
You have that type of personality. In general, mate, fantastic start. Well
Cheers.
done.
Thanks very much indeed.
Well
Cheers,
done.
man. Thank you.
Good start.
Cheers, mate.
Oh, excuse me while I let my coffee go down. I don't know whether James is up to actually being given fabric and said, go and see Mrs. So-and-so, because he can't drive, he doesn't know the area, and there's so much you need to know about this. I mean, learning curtains is a 10-year apprenticeship.
Mm.
Anyway, I shall
Do
be
you think
out.
Keith is fully appreciative of the, I suppose, the subtleties of what you do in your profession? I mean, he's acquired the skills, obviously, but
He's an engineer, electrician.
It was February in the Yorkshire Dales. But the organisation of the Milners fashion show was already getting underway. Even though it was Leonie's event, I wasn't surprised to find Linda taking charge of things.
Dear, dear.
So you're coordinating the fashion show with your daughter, is that right?
Yes, I do the... I decide on what they wear, but obviously I run them past her to make sure she agrees. Then I do the commentary and... oh dear, dear. And sort out the models and whatever.
So what exactly is left for Leonie?
Well, she's been busy pricing things up.
Went straight to that and said,
It turned out that Leonie was returning from a long lunch break with a sales rep from Playtex called Phil. Evidently, Leonie had a soft spot for Phil.
I don't know what she sees in him. I don't see anything in him. I've only got eyes for my husband.
See, look at this, eh? The guilty conscience that is, isn't it?
What do you think, Linda?
Oh, I think she thinks he's wonderful. I mean, when we went to the What's It exhibition, she's back. But just walk this way. There's Gary. There's Gary.
He's not called Gary.
What?
He's not called Gary.
Oh, he's called Gary. Phil.
Just at that moment, Phil from Playtex walked in with his samples.
What? Nothing.
My mother would love it.
Do you know? Hello, Philip.
Hello, how are you?
Do you know?
He just takes her out to lunch. He knows he's got easy sales with Leonie. He doesn't have to try hard. So he just buys her a cup of soup and that, and she's put it in his hands.
What?
I'm just saying that Phil buys you a cup of soup and you're putty in his hands, aren't you? Touchy subject, because I tease her. No.
Towards the end of the day, David set off to fit some blinds at a house in the valley. At closing time, I'd gone round to Linda's for a cup of tea. While I was there, Keith turned up. There had been another bust-up over the paperwork, but this time it was between David and James.
Upstairs and David said, "Come back, don't you walk away from me, come back." And James just lost it. "How dare you talk to me like that? Bugger off, you bloody leave me alone, I don't want to know, I don't want to talk to you. Who the hell do you think you are coming to this shop?" And David saying, it's my shop. I can talk to who I want, how I want in my shop." He says, "You're not bloody talking to me about that." And I walked over and David turned around to me and says, "Keith, you've given me his bloody notice." And then James turned around to me and said, "Don't bloody care, you can bloody swivel on your job." So James has come downstairs, he says, "I'm getting out, I've got to go." And I said, "You're coming up to Penley's for a coffee." By that time he's calmed down a bit. "I'm really sorry, I'm really sorry." I said, "James, you've done the right thing." I said, "This has been brewing for a little while." You see, and this is what David can't get his head around. He thinks that I should be tipping my cap to him all the time. And I've got a lot of respect for you, Dad, but don't knock my staff down.
No, exactly. He's got to let you
James
deal
is my
with stuff.
bloke.
Yeah.
All right? And I've told James that this afternoon.
Yeah.
And I can't lose James.
No, I know you can't.
James starts feeling that he doesn't want to come into work and I'm stuffed.
Well, yes, you see, and if James goes, then you're one down.
Yeah.
So David won't go. David then has got a reason to stay.
Yeah, but he's
because Keith needs me.
No, I don't, because I won't work on that basis. I'm not having that. I'm not having it.
Did you feel, sorry?
Go on.
Did you feel like quitting? It seemed like you a bit...
I felt like walking out because I just can't, it's just totally undermined everything I've been building the last few months. I just get to the stage where I just think, if I'm going to have all the good work undone in 5 minutes I've been building on the last 6 months, I'll just walk away from it.
Unfortunately.
I could see that Keith and Linda were now really worried that David might not retire.
Yes, he does, but then, as I say...
They had to make sure James did not quit.
He's the whipping boy.
The next day, I found James in menswear. He seemed uncertain about his future now in the shop.
I don't want to upset David because he's a good man, you know, and if he's going to feel awkward and upset in his own environment, then I don't think I should be here to make him feel that way. If you see what I mean.
Right, yes.
And I sense he's a bit nervy, and I don't want to. So I feel like I'm a bit of I don't know. Just feel like I might.
You feel like you might be making things worse?
Perhaps I might be making a situation that's already difficult for David more so, if you like. And I don't want to, I don't want to do that.
Keith started to try and reassure James to make sure he didn't hand his notice in.
I know. So what happens when he goes in April?
Yeah.
Who's running the business?
Yeah. So you, mate. Sorry. I mean.
And who do I need to help me run the business?
Yeah, me. But I mean, still, it's a terrible atmosphere at the moment.
It's not you. It's me, and it's the business, and it's the retirement. I told you, I'm looking after you. You're my man. I'll sort you out. Okay?
Yep.
Off you go then.
All right. See ya.
James went back to his desk, but spent most of the day unhappy and unable to focus. Then, in the afternoon, Keith found him in the stockroom, in tears.
Well, we're going to go over to Peter later.
What time are we going?
Well, when David gets back, we'll go.
All right.
All right.
Yeah. All right. I should start myself on it. All right.
Yeah. All right. He's very delicate at the moment.
Later that night, Keith got the other 3 directors together for an emergency meeting.
James's biggest concern is having a shouting match like that again. And I don't want him to feel like that. I want him to come out with you, and I want him to learn, and I want him to not, because he's put a barrier up now.
Yeah.
So
I think the next time that David finds that something's gone missing and James has got him, before he goes berserk, he ought to say, well, have I ever done this myself? For instance, last Friday, I leaned over to the fire extinguisher and I took one of these from there, and I said to Keith, what's this doing here? And he said, don't know, your husband put it there.
What was it?
It was one of those, stuck on top of the fire extinguisher.
Filed
On the fire extinguisher. Now, isn't that so?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I probably would have found it when I found it in Chelsea.
That's not the point. That's the same thing as James.
I mean,
And it's like you come flying in going, I'm late, I need all the stuff, where is it? Give it to me.
But then you
And
say,
everyone's
I
like,
presume it's all done this, that and the other.
That is what puts anxiety onto James.
I think it's very funny, this. The fact that you're discussing putting me under scrutiny.
Well, it's the hour-and-a-half lunches on the top of Scathnick. They used to have them going to sleep.
No, I didn't go. I've never had half an hour. When I was out travelling, I was out all day and every day, working hard, carrying cases from farmhouse to
He
farmhouse.
says he wants to give up. Deep down, somewhere inside, there's a little bug that is saying, they're taking over. They're taking this that was yours off you. And somehow, the fact that James also has a desk there, this little thing in his head is saying that as well to him.
I think Linda could see that even if he wanted to retire, there was something stopping David from doing so. For some reason, he couldn't let go of the business. The next day, David was in Milners early. He'd been thinking about the previous night's meeting and was particularly hurt by what Linda had said.
She's supposed to be an intelligent person, and she came over last night as not an intelligent person by saying what she did.
What did she say?
Well, you remember, it's all on your tape. I won't read
No, but what I mean is what specific things?
that I couldn't organise things, and I was incapable of running a business. Well, she made a comment to that respect somewhere along the line.
And what makes you think that's not an intelligent thing to say?
Well, because she can't run it herself, and if she can't run it herself, you don't criticise somebody else.
Right, but she thinks she can run it.
Oh, gosh, she could run this with both hands tied behind her back.
That's what she thinks. Yes.
Well, you know Linda. You know Linda.
But just to clarify then, So in your relationship with Linda, you assume the power by actually rather cleverly pretending not to have the power and that she has got it. But she wouldn't know that.
No, she probably. I think she's cute enough to realise that she knows that I'm doing this, but she can't really do much about it, can she? It's a little cat and mouse game. I quite enjoy it at times, and you know.
It's very psychological, isn't it?
It is. Oh yes, I'm really enjoying it actually at the moment. Actually, that was why I wanted the BBC to come, because I thought I can play you all along at this, and I can see if I can do the similar thing with you. But I think you're a little bit more intelligent than she is, because you can see through me, and I can sort of see that you're a very similar person to myself.
Am I?
I think you'd be a little bit devious as well.
And you think you're devious?
Well, no, I'm not devious, but I think you might be. I think you'd slip off and not tell your wife and do certain things that she wouldn't know about. You have that look about you.
Do I?
Pardon? You have that, the eyes. By looking at your eyes, there's something in your eyes that tell me that you might have a couple of women about somewhere.
You think that's with me?
Yeah, yes, Richard.
You don't.
You're young enough to do it. I'm old now. I never got around because I've never had the opportunity. I've been living in Leonie all my life. But just think of the opportunities in Manchester and Leeds with all these brothels and all this. I mean, with the internet now and all this stuff, you're probably.
Yeah, but that's quite scathing of me to say that.
Is it? You don't mind, though, do you?
I was surprised by this turn of events. But I was getting a clearer picture now of a man who liked to be in control
Has the bill been made out for that?
and enjoyed psychological games. Maybe I was just getting mixed up in all of that. Perhaps David had actually manipulated the bust-up with James. The next day, Keith took a call from James. He had decided to resign. I happened to be on a trip fitting blinds with David, and I wanted to know if he had any regrets about the incident with James.
How do you feel now about what happened between you and James?
Well, I don't worry about it in the slightest. It was just a hiccup which you always get in any relationship.
When you were James's age, were you as sensitive as him?
I don't know. Can't remember, it's so long ago. I wouldn't have thought so. We did as you told in those days. We just did as we were told and we got on with it. I think nowadays people tend to sort of talk back to people as if they feel that they're aggrieved in any way.
4 weeks before David was due to retire, Milners was hosting its fashion show.
Usually we get people who sit in front of the on the stool.
As ever, Linda was running the show, and she had her window dresser, Margaret, helping her.
That's a good idea. Look at that.
In 3 hours' time, they would have to cram over 100 people into the downstairs of the shop. In many ways, I think Leonie and Keith saw this event as a chance to stake their claim on Milners, announce to the world what their plans for the shop would be.
This is the way we're losing our stigma that I feel that we've had for a lot of years.
You know, it's part of the new culture, isn't it? And Leonie's now, firmly in control of this floor.
As if to prove a point, Leonie started adjusting the seating. And this upset Margaret.
What are you doing?
I'm just shoving them up a bit.
We've done it, Leonie. Look,
There's enough leg room.
we know we've worked it out. I have done it. You want to what? If you want to what I have done, you will end up doing this fashion show on your own tonight because I will go out. Now stop it.
Only, look, I'm not doing anything. All I'm doing is putting another chair in there because you had space for at least 2 more chairs. I've just moved them up slightly.
Right.
So that you can get another chair in there. Stop it. We have just proved that the people who are sat there, are they the blind people, the 3 people who are sat here? Because they can't see a thing in the shop when they're sat here.
Well, there weren't any chairs there. I deliberately left that blank.
Yeah, but why? We've always had people here. So why are you suddenly going to leave a big gap?
Because then people can see if they are sitting there. Who wants to sit behind a pillar?
Mum, you can still see all the way up there, you can see when they come round here, and you can see down there. And I've just proved it. I even got the BBC to sit there, those 3 seats, to see whether they can sit
I will tell you something. You will lose your staff because...
Do you know, sometimes I don't care.
It's a case of respect. You treat them well, they will do anything.
Yeah, well, I treat them well, but the staff don't treat me well. So it's about authority.
You have been out fanning about all morning. I saw you over there. 10 minutes you spent with Helen Jackson. Had you got 10 minutes to spend talking to Helen Jackson? You haven't. But you were over there, yak, yak, yak. We've been in here working. Then you come back and you change everything we've done. Well, we don't like
How
that.
do I change everything?
Margaret, Debs and I have got the intelligence to sort it out ourselves.
Well,
Thank you very much.
certain members do. I don't fucking care if she fucks off, because she fucking pisses me off. And that's 3 chairs. That's a big scat
Well,
there.
I hope that 3 extra chairs is worth two good members of staff.
I don't think Margaret would take that.
Margaret was hurt. Margaret was hurt then. She's just said to me. It annoyed me when I've just done
only
a job.
put 1 extra chair in the row at the front and the row at the back, and I put 3 extra chairs there.
You ought to consider, is 1 extra chair worth the aggro that you're causing for other people? Unfortunately, Leonie,
do you know, in the
you're
bigger
a
picture-
Milner. You're a Milner.
Okay,
and
but in
you've
the
got
bigger
that gene.
picture, I think it's worth getting the people in rather than turning them away. And I can see the bigger picture. I don't fucking care if Debs fucks off.
I felt sorry for Leonie. After all, this was her event.
Problems in mill. Who's going for the sarnies?
I'd seen mother and daughter argue before, but never a row as big as this.
Too late, she cried.
But then, just as they were preparing to go home and get changed, Leonie sought her mother out for reconciliation.
Yes.
I don't think we've ever been this organised.
We.
We, come on, we.
Well, I'm always organised, aren't I?
I better take a...
It's called age.
Later that evening, the shop filled up with loyal customers. Wine and nibbles were offered round. By 8 o'clock, all 104 seats were taken.
Right, that's that. Now you want that's a change. Now you want
ladies!
Good evening. Good evening. My husband would like to say a few words.
Welcome, ladies. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here tonight to our 2000...
At the start, David made a speech,
Most of you will know me.
and just like at the staff Christmas party, he told the audience he was about to retire.
As I am now approaching 65, I have decided to hand over the business to my daughter Leonie.
Then again, maybe this was just another case of David reading out what Linda wanted him to say.
Now, I would like to hand over to Linda, who is ready to start the fashion show.
Thank you, dear. Well, it's wonderful to see so many of you, and I hope you will all find...
Then Linda compared the show,
Now, for our models, we have...
which went on for nearly 2 hours.
We're going to start with Joe.
Linda may have been in charge, but this was Leonie's moment of reckoning. What would the ladies of the Yorkshire Dales make of her spring collection?
12 to 22 and 45 to 25. In an Oscar beam, charcoal stripe, details at the front, in viscose and elastic. Small to extra large and £34.95. In ivory camisole. Again, 100% polyester, adjustable strap, sizes not Now we have a bit of a change for this next round. There is a title to it, and it would suit my husband because he's going to sleep. It is called And So to Bed. Poppy motif. They're 100% cotton and they are are made in England. Small to large, 36.25. Now, can I ask all the models to come down?
When the show finally ended, there was no denying how much the audience had enjoyed themselves. I hoped Leonie felt vindicated. Afterwards, the shop was a sea of customers and the tills were ringing. I asked David whether he thought the evening had been a success.
What are you thinking when you survey the room now and see all these people?
I think it's been a good night. Can you see me walking away from a situation like this? I mean, it's officially I'm 65, but you see, Keith hasn't got a replacement for me. You can't look after the inside of the shop upstairs with everything that we sell and go out and fit curtains and carpets and blinds. It's impossible. Where's the trailer?
By now, I'd got used to David telling me he wasn't going to retire, but I wasn't sure the shop couldn't survive without him. My time in the Dales was coming to an end, and yet I still felt there was a part of David I hadn't got to know. That part that made him refuse to let go of his business.
Are you all right down there?
So I talked to the person who knew him best, Linda.
You know your way around.
I think David is anxious now and about going. This has been his baby, if you like, for 40 odd years. And to let it go is difficult. I mean, even to family. I think it would be the same even if Keith was his son rather than his son-in-law. Just to let it go, he
Then Linda mentioned David's father.
He didn't treat David as a son, for my way of thinking. He was just another member of staff. Sad to say, but it rankles with me to this day. And I think it's caused David a lot of problems. As what I say, David is still trying to prove himself worthy. And I don't think he has any need to, because he has built up this business.
How was it damaged? How do you think his father damaged David?
Well, he wasn't a father as such. I never knew them to speak of anything except business. There was none, oh, did you see the match on Saturday? Or how about coming out for a game? Because they both played golf. How about coming out for a game of golf? Or anything. It was all business.
A few days before David's birthday, I arranged to film with him as he did some drawing in the Dales. The view outside his home was breathtaking. I wanted to talk to David about his father.
Do you think he could have been a bit more sort of loving to you as a child?
Probably. He could have been. He wouldn't sort of have any nonsense. He was quite a regimented type.
Linda has suggested to me that she thinks that your father never really gave you the approval that maybe you
Probably
deserved.
You're right. Yes, maybe that's something that. I mean, he held on to it right till the very end.
The business.
Yes. I mean, although we were partners, he knew what he wanted, and he wouldn't. And very rarely would he back down from once he'd made his decision on something.
David then revealed the death of his father had caused him to suffer a deep depression.
I just felt really, really, really rotten. I didn't know what it was, and Linda got the doctor. Went to the doctors, and I went down to see him, and I think he examined me and said, you know, you're just under pressure or stress or something. I went to the hospital, and they gave me one of those new treatments that they give you electric shock treatment in your head. I had 6 weeks of that.
6 weeks of that?
Yeah, you know, where they sort of put an electrode on your forehead and they give you a small electric current. It's called, it's a treatment that a lot of people have nowadays. It's nothing new. It was, as I say, 3 months before I went back.
Hearing David talk about his depression helped me to understand him much more. It also made me think about how family-run businesses could pass stress on from one generation to another. After all, wasn't David refusing to pass on his business to Leonie, just like his father had with him? I decided to ask Leonie about David when we returned to the shop.
I didn't really have a strong father-daughter relationship with my dad. My dad seemed to be always here. My dad seemed to be always chasing the business and growing the business. And I don't want that to be the centre of our life. And I don't want the children to turn that back to us when they're older and say, you were never there for us because you were always at the shop. And that the girls don't have a relationship with Keith. Because he had a relationship with the business.
On the day of David's retirement party, I bumped into him in the market square.
Good morning, boys.
Hello.
How did you know I was here?
We have our ways.
You have your ways, have you?
How are you? You well?
Very well, thank you very much, yes.
In the window.
Yes, I say, it's nice. I saw them, they did it last night.
I was struck by how relaxed David seemed, which was odd. After all, this was the day he was saying goodbye to his beloved shop.
Good morning, all. Good morning. Good morning.
Happy birthday retirement.
Oh, yes.
How to tell him that now?
His family had lovingly decorated the store with balloons and pictures from the last 40 years.
That was a little.
Well done. Did you want me to have a big bang?
Old friends and customers were invited in for a glass of champagne.
Right, David, on behalf of all the girls, we wish you all a very happy retirement, and I hope you had a lovely 65th birthday on Wednesday.
Thank you very much.
So say all the best, we'll miss you, but I'm sure you'll keep popping back in.
I'm sure I will.
When I first started making this film, I thought it would be the story of a man coming to terms with his retirement after a lifetime dedicated to work. But now we had reached that point, I realised David's story wasn't really about whether or not he retired. It was more to do with the fact that at 65, he still felt he had something to prove. I hoped that feeling would go once he'd settled into his retirement. But after a couple of hours, I noticed David wasn't around.
Do you know where David is?
Man's gone to the loo.
No one knew where he was. But he hadn't left. I found him upstairs, taking an order.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
For some blinds.
You're still working?
Yes, I am.
Aren't you going to retire though?
What do you think?
And the next episode of Department Store is right here on BBC4 next Thursday at 10. Next tonight, politics and education combine, Chinese style, in Storyville.